Amazing millionaire late for meeting reveals incredible kindness to homeless mom and baby in rain. Ethan Reynolds, self-made millionaire and CEO, sped down the slick asphalt, a sharp chill nipping at his skin despite the interior warmth of his luxury sedan. He checked his watch for the third time, anxiety tightening his chest as the rain intensified, drumming relentlessly against the car roof. A crucial meeting loomed, one that could catapult his company's stock and income into the stratosphere. Yet, as the wipers struggled against the downpour, an unsettling question gnawed at him. Was this all worth it? Push aside the thoughts. He had a legacy to build, a family to support, and profits to bolster. The voice of his late father rang in his ears, a constant reminder of the importance of family and community. But as the storm intensified, so did the disquiet pulsing within him, a murmur sharper than any financial report. The high-rises loomed above, casting shadows that mirrored his inner tumult. These monolithic structures spoke of ambition, yet felt hollow and oppressive, a prison for a man who once dared to dream for more. He veered into a side street, hoping to escape the rain, but fate had other plans. It crested unexpectedly, transforming the urban landscape into a chaotic torrent as the streets turned to rivers of murky water. Frantically seeking shelter, he caught sight of something that stopped him in his tracks. A homeless woman, Jessica, sheltering her infant son, Finn, under a wet, ragged blanket. His heart sank. The sight cut through the sterile corporate image he perpetuated, revealing an emotional rawness he had long ignored. Around them, pedestrians rushed by, heads bowed against the rain, indifferent to the suffering just steps away. He hesitated. The ticking clock reminded him of the stakes. The meeting could solidify his empire or shatter it. Yet here stood a mother and child, mere feet away from him, embodying the vulnerability he had shielded himself against. An internal war raged. Did he honor that appointment and solidify his status? Or did he extend a hand to someone in desperate need? Each second stretched as he weighed the importance of one small act against the towering ambition driving his life. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Driven by an impulse he couldn't quite understand, he abandoned the grip of his ambitions and approached Jessica. "Would you like to join me for a meal?" he offered, surprising himself with the simplicity of his invitation. As they settled under a cafe awning, with plates of warm food between them, her story spilled forth. Battles against addiction, a lost job, a world that seemed to conspire against her. Every word sank into Ethan like lead, pulling him further into a painful self-examination. The eyes of passers-by flicked toward him, whispers bubbling among them as his compassionate act spread through social media. The relentless attention weighed heavily. Admiration felt like a disguise, while skepticism swirled in the corners of his mind. How could he champion causes that were so foreign to his ascension? Standing amidst rising fame and pressure, Ethan found his heart unsettled. The burden of that moment echoed in his thoughts, a visceral reminder of the broken systems around him. He faced a crossroads. One direction led back to the barren success of corporate ladders, the other into the murky waters of humanity that had called to him so fiercely. Caught in this reckoning, his vision blurred with every drop that hit the pavement. Rushing forward to seize opportunities had propelled him thus far, but now he questioned if he could brave the storms of change ahead. The rain continued to fall, both outside and within, leaving him hanging in uncertainty as he stood poised on the threshold of transformation. Would he pursue this newfound feeling of purpose, or retreat back into a world where ambition reigned supreme? The answer eluded him, as frustration mixed with a fierce determination, swirling restlessly in his chest. The cafe's warmth enveloped Ethan, yet he felt an unsettling chill trace his spine, a stark contrast to the hospitality of his surroundings. The food lay untouched before him, the fragrance of warm bread mingling with discomfort. He stole glances at Jessica, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her tired eyes sparkling with gratitude. Each smile she offered came laced with the burden of her past, a resilience that resonated deep within him. As Jessica recounted the trials she faced, Ethan's mind raced. Each word reverberated with a haunting familiarity, echoing his own struggles, in a different realm, but sharing a common essence. The lofty boardrooms he frequented, with all their intricate strategies and sharp edges, now felt trivial against the rawness of human vulnerability. "Why did you help me?" Jessica asked, her voice barely a whisper, shaking him from his thoughts. He hesitated, grappling with the sincerity of her inquiry. "I suppose I needed to," he replied, his words surprising even himself. The revelation hung heavily between them. Deep down, he acknowledged a growing discontent with his life's trajectory. "I'm not sure if that makes sense." "But it does," she pushed back gently, sincerity filling her voice. "Everyone has their reasons." Ethan felt a crack in the armor he had constructed over years, the armor that had shielded him from such questions of morality and responsibility. That moment sliced through his corporate armor, unveiling layers of guilt and existential doubt he had buried beneath stock reports and profit margins. He had sought success, but now there was this unsettling realization that perhaps success had veered off its intended path. The conversation shifted, revealing tales of perseverance as well as cracks of despair, and Ethan found himself sharing snippets of his life, the relentless pursuit of victory at the expense of connections, the hollowness of his achievements. As he spoke, he could feel a shift in his resolve, a burgeoning desire to amalgamate his ambition with purpose. Perhaps this encounter was more than just kindness. It thrust him into the realization that fortune, when ungrounded, could become a burden. With every exchange, his internal conflict raged on, illuminating the distinct fork in his life's path. Did he dare venture into this unknown territory, embracing the chaos and complexity of life beyond the walls of his corporate empire? What would he become if he chose to integrate a deeper purpose within his work? The urgency of the meeting he'd abandoned loomed ominously, but the faces of Jessica and Finn outweighed the prospect of another deal rattled from the corporate world. Suddenly, a thought sparked in Ethan's mind. What if he embraced duality? Success and purpose coalesced into a powerful synergy. Perhaps he could leverage his influence to foster positive change, intertwining his entrepreneurial spirit with authentic compassion. What if instead of merely donating his wealth, he created systems that empowered others, bridging the gap between aspiration and need? Ethan's heart raced. As they shared laughs and stories that day, the sun broke through the clouds, casting unexpected light on a hidden side of the city. He saw the world anew. But could he muster the courage to alter the course he had long since charted? The decision hung before him, heavy and perilous. In the back of his mind, the bustling city began to pulse with newfound urgency. The wheel of fate had shifted. As they concluded their meal, Ethan's phone buzzed, a reminder of his crucial meeting, a force pulling him back to the currents of his normal life. The moment had set his internal gears into motion, yet he faced a dawning realization. Going back meant forsaking the transformation waiting in the wings. Could he truly walk away from the gravitational pull of heaped expectations? Or would he confront the tidal wave of his past choices and finally redefine what success truly meant? The time had come to face this looming decision head-on, leaving his heart pounding with possibilities yet unexplored. Ethan sat in the cafe, breathless, his mind swirling with the weight of his choices. The phone buzzed again, this time seemingly more insistent, reminding him of a world that expected him to adhere to its rigid definitions of success. He glanced at Jessica, who was now engaged in a quiet conversation with Finn. They had become allies in this unpredictable encounter, and he felt an inexplicable connection to them, as if they represented a world he had long neglected. He felt torn between the past and a fledgling future, each representing promises unfulfilled. What did it mean to be a success if the connections that could have enriched his journey lay dormant? He reached for his phone, contemplating the familiar routine that awaited him. The stock presentations, the numbers, the presentations. Yet nothing felt compelling anymore. Jessica caught his eye, and for a moment, the bustling cafe faded into the background. Her life was a vivid tapestry of challenges, woven with threads of resilience and strength. It struck Ethan like a bolt of lightning. He was suddenly aware of the power of sharing stories and the potential for transformation that lay in authentic connection. He craved to express the growing desire within him, to pivot, to craft an impact beyond profits and loss statements. "Ethan?" Jessica's voice pierced through his musing, pulling him back. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, a hint of vulnerability seeping into his tone. "How do you explain the shift happening in your core? How do you lay bare that growth feels like staring into an abyss?" He made a decision, not realizing it at the time. "I can't go back to that meeting." Finn raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "It's an important point for your career." Ethan shook his head. "It's important to the company, maybe. But what about me?" The question hung in the air, weighted with meaning. Jessica smiled, brightening the gloom that had momentarily settled. "What do you want then?" He paused, reflecting on the delicate threads of his life he often ignored. "I want to create something that matters, even if it's risky. Something that builds people up instead of leaving them behind." Finn leaned forward, visibly curious. "Like a business?" "More than that," Ethan articulated slowly, ideas crystallizing with every beat of his heart. "A system. A way to support people living in the margins, to empower them to become active participants in their own lives." The clarity of his purpose infused him with energy. This was the pivot he yearned for. The entrepreneurial arc he envisioned wasn't merely about profit. It was about flipping the narrative, redefining what had once suffocated him with success. As they talked, Ethan outlined ideas that floated in his mind. Mentorship programs, skill workshops, even leveraging his business network to provide resources. Each suggestion felt more vibrant than the last, infusing him with a giddy sense of what could be. In the face of daunting possibilities, a creeping uncertainty lingered. Were these ideas too ambitious? What if he failed? "Ethan," Jessica's voice cut through once more, grounding him. "You know this could change everything, right? It's a big leap." He nodded. "But maybe that's precisely the point. I've been playing too safe for too long." The concept of change hung over them, raw and transformative. The cafe around them grew noisy again, filled with the familiar cacophony of clattering dishes and light chatter. Outside, the world continued to move, oblivious to his internal genesis. With dawn breaking within, Ethan envisioned a quest, not just for himself, but for those who felt lost and unheard. But was he ready to abandon everything mainstream success symbolized? Was the potential for real impact worth risking his carefully constructed identity? As they stood to leave, the remnants of their meal still lingered, mirroring the uncertainty of his next step. He'd have to confront the voices of doubt, waiting for him back in the corporate world. The door swung open, and he stepped into the bustling city, a renewed sense of purpose coursing through him. Yet, behind him lingered the question that would shape his path. What would he sacrifice for this newfound pursuit? The moment of truth loomed, and Ethan felt the pulse of opportunity vibrate through him as he took a deep breath, ready to make decisions that would reverberate through his life. The wind felt different now, hinting at a change yet to come. How would he navigate the conflicting currents of ambition and authenticity? Would he finally shatter the constraints that had held him captive? Ethan navigated the chaotic streets, his heart racing with both apprehension and determination. With each step, the weight of his decision to embrace a path of authenticity settled more comfortably on his shoulders. This wasn't just about entrepreneurship. It was about redefining who he was in a world that seemed insistent on keeping him in a box. He pulled out the ideas he had scorched into his mind: mentorship programs, community workshops, avenues to channel resources to those who existed on the peripheries of acceptance. These thoughts began to congeal into a plan, yet undergirding them was a gnawing doubt. What if he fell short? What if the foundation he aimed to build crumbled before he even got it off the ground? As he reached his office building, he felt the familiar pang of nostalgia mixed with anxiety. The place where he had demonstrated prowess, numbers and strategy flowing through his fingers like water, now felt alien and suffocating. Was this what success looked like? He hesitated at the entrance, the glass doors a silent sentry to the world he was prepared to walk away from. If he stepped inside, he'd be stepping back into the life tethered by expectations. "Stop the doubt, Ethan," he muttered under his breath. Maybe this wasn't just an exit. Maybe it was a gateway. He had the opportunity to create a narrative that didn't just focus on profit margins but on human impact. It was exhilarating and terrifying. He took a deep breath and pushed through the doors swinging shut behind him, muting the cacophony of the outside world for a moment. The corporate atmosphere was thick with the faint smell of burnt coffee and anxiety, punctuated by the chatter of colleagues discussing quarterly reports. Ethan made his way toward his desk, his thoughts churning in disarray. Just as he turned to check his emails, a familiar voice piped up from across the aisle. "Ethan, glad to see you. I thought you missed your big meeting." It was Mark, his ambitious colleague who thrived on competition. Ethan offered a non-committal grin. "Just, making sure everything's ready." Mark cocked an eyebrow, clearly assessing Ethan's demeanor. "You seem off. You okay, man?" For a moment, Ethan considered confiding in him, maybe sharing fragments of his newfound vision. But the thought stilled his tongue. Could he trust anyone here? Would they understand that excitement over community dynamics eclipsed stock options? He quickly trapped the impulse down. "Yeah, just some personal stuff." Mark shrugged it off, moving on to discuss Excel shortcuts that would help boost productivity. As the conversation pivoted away, Ethan felt himself drifting, both mentally and emotionally. Then it struck him decisively. Could he merge his existing life with the new one he dreamt of? He pictured it, grafting his strategic mind onto the heart of community-driven initiatives. He had always been good at connecting dots, lining them up in ways that made sense. Why not create a platform where individuals could contribute their skills, just as he had done for so long in business? That thought emboldened him as the hours passed. He started to sketch plans on a notepad, mapping out his vision. A platform that could unite resources, skills, and people. A communal space where the metaphorical doors of opportunity swung wide open. Suddenly, a notification captured his attention. A reminder for the meeting he had initially dismissed. Ethan stared at the screen, wrestling with the freedom of choice. The career-oriented part of him throbbed with guilt, prickling under the weight of responsibility. But the new part of him pushed back harder. That path didn't suit him anymore. He stood abruptly, heart racing at the prospect of a real shift. Could he abandon the well-trodden path? Identify himself not through spreadsheets but by who he aimed to uplift. The tension of the moment loomed before him, almost palpable. Ethan took a deep breath and turned away from the desk, his resolve solidifying. His feet carried him towards the conference room. Was he stepping into the meeting, or abandoning it? The door loomed ahead, a threshold to his current reality and everything he envisioned. The line between his old identity and the man he dreamt of becoming was as fine as the glass pane he now faced. The moment had arrived for him to confront it. Would he dare embrace the uncertain potential of his ideals and assert his vision, or would he revert to safety, Only one question echoed in his mind. How long could he delay who he truly wanted to be? As he reached for the handle, anticipation flooded him. This was just the beginning. But what awaited him inside the room? Ethan's hand hovered over the door handle, the cold metal a jarring reminder of the reality he was about to step into. A part of him yearned for reassurance, a familiar embrace of corporate discussions and strategic negotiations that had defined his identity for so long. But another part of him burned with the urgency of change and transformation. For far too long, he had hidden in plain sight, playing a role that felt increasingly out of sync with who he was becoming. The door swung open before he could think twice. He retraced his old steps into the conference room, the sterile brightness of fluorescent lights illuminating the faces of his colleagues. Conversations paused momentarily as eyes turned his way, expectations dancing in the air like specters. Ethan felt the urge to shrink back as if slipping under the surface, but he straightened his spine instead, drawing on a mix of courage and clarity. The meeting commenced, but Ethan found himself a little out of reach from the discussions on profit projections and market share. His thoughts drifted back to the ideas that had captivated him. A platform for individuals to link their skills with opportunities, a catalyst for change, a calling. He imagined pitching this vision to his colleagues, a radical departure from spreadsheets and quarterly performance. What if, just what if, he could steer this company in a direction grounded in social impact? The thought sparked an adrenaline rush, igniting his determination. As discussions unfolded, Ethan meticulously observed the reactions around him. Mark dominated the conversation, showcasing the latest metrics as they flashed across the screen. Each statistic felt like a reminder of why Ethan had wanted to break free. They represented a reliance on superficial success over meaningful contributions. The goals were clear: hit the targets, deliver the results. But they also felt so hollow. Ethan, do you have any insights on the latest campaign? Mark's voice sliced through his thoughts, bringing Ethan back to the present moment. What if we pivoted our approach? The words tumbled out before he could fully evaluate their implications. His heart raced as silence enveloped the room, eyebrows raised. A pivot? You mean move towards... Mark trailed off, confused. Ethan swallowed hard. A new model. One that incorporates community engagement, mentorship programs. We have expertise that can transcend traditional business boundaries. The collective gaze of his colleagues mirrored skepticism and intrigue. A subtle shift had occurred. The old Ethan, the team player who pitched ideas filtered through corporate pragmatism, was now advocating for something uncharted and audacious. But would they reject him? The tension grew around the table. Ethan pressed on, explaining the benefits of aligning the company with a purpose-driven approach, potentially unlocking untapped markets, while changing lives in the process. Each word felt like a small act of rebellion, challenging the status quo that had held him captive. Gradually, expressions shifted from doubt to contemplation. He sensed a flicker of interest from one junior analyst, a nod of encouragement from a senior executive. Ethan's heart surged. The tides were turning, and with them, the possibility that he could enact real change began to take shape. As the meeting ended, Mark lingered, a smirk cutting across his face. Not bad, Ethan. But you know that's a long shot, right? I appreciate your perspective, Mark, Ethan replied, lacing his voice with confidence. But sometimes long shots build the most meaningful legacies. He turned to leave, his internal resolve amplified. Outside the conference room, he could feel the nervous energy shifting into determination. The first tentative steps toward his vision had planted in his mind, branching out like roots reaching for nourishment. Returning to his desk, Ethan began drafting a proposal for his ideas, his excitement palpable. He scanned the room and noticed Mark staring at him, the irritation now mixed with something else, uncertainty. What if, beneath the bravado and competitive nature, Mark felt the need for purpose too? Ethan pushed away the thought, focusing on his mission. The fear of failure and self-doubt nagged at him, but the prospects of change filled him with hope. Gabriella, the single mother he'd once helped, flashed across his mind now more as a representation of purpose than weakness. There was a world outside his corporate bubble, a reality ready to be transformed. But how could he truly garner the support he needed to execute his vision? As he sat back, pen poised above paper, a fresh wave of urgency washed over him. The real test lay ahead. He needed allies, influencers who believed in this movement he had created in his mind. Ethan leaned forward, eyes focused. The path was fraught with uncertainty, but embracing this journey was non-negotiable. With steady hands he began to write, each letter solidifying his commitment. This was no longer about seeking approval. It was about authenticity. However, fate had a way of throwing curveballs. Just as he turned the page, an email notification flashed on the screen. Subject: Emergency meeting, company strategy reassessment. His stomach dropped. What awaited him in that meeting? Would this be the juncture where he must truly confront the reality of his ambitions? Ethan's heart raced as he opened the email, dread settling like a lead weight in his stomach. In the corporate world, strategy reassessment often meant instability, an impending storm of decisions that could dismantle everything he had just begun to build. Each keystroke sent a ripple of anxiety through him, yet his resolve grew sharper. He took a deep breath, rising from his desk and heading toward the meeting room again. With every step, he forged a mental framework, preparing not just to defend his proposal, but to advocate fervently for it. He kept reminding himself of his purpose. He was no longer just a cog in the wheel, but a voice for what was possible. Upon entering, Ethan found his colleagues seated, faces marked by urgency. Mark leaned back in his chair, a skeptical grin plastered across his face. A quick glance at the projector revealed charts and graphs that laid bare the current trajectory, shaky at best. A tangle of dread and determination coursed through him as he took a seat. The director spoke first, addressing the company's lagging performance. "We're facing significant challenges," she said, her tone grave. "Market trends suggest we need immediate action or risk losing our foothold. I need bold ideas to modify our trajectory." The room buzzed with murmurs of retraction and cost-cutting measures. As the suggestions spilled forth, Ethan's thoughts spun. Each proposal echoed a similar theme: retreat, cut losses, play it safe. But he had put too much of his heart into his vision to fold now. He waited for the right moment, his pulse quickening as doubt clouded his mind. "Actually," he interjected, raising his hand slightly. The chatter faded, and a line of eyes shifted toward him again, some curious, others mocking. "I believe we need to consider a different approach." Mark's smirk deepened, but Ethan pressed on. "What if, instead of focusing solely on recovery, we embraced a transformative strategy that could lead to new revenue streams? What if we broadened our outreach to the community?" Murmurs rippled around the room, and Mark leaned forward, eyebrows raised mockingly. "What, venture into charity? We're a corporation, not a non-profit." "Not charity, Mark," Ethan countered, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "I'm suggesting a business model that encompasses social responsibility as a core component. If we align ourselves with community needs, we can develop our brand, expand our market share, and solidify our position in a meaningful way." The silence that followed felt electric, the air thick with tension as skepticism hung heavily. Yet he caught sight of the junior analyst from earlier, her eyebrows lifted, clearly weighing the potential in his argument. "Think of the positive branding," Ethan added, a rush of words escaping. "Consumer awareness is shifting. People want to support businesses that impact their lives positively. Together we can redefine success beyond mere numbers." He watched as a few expressions softened, uncertainty creeping into their rigid stances. "Community engagement is not just the right thing to do, it's smart business." Before he could question his boldness, the director spoke. "Ethan, I'm interested in your perspective, but you need to lay out a concrete plan. How do we tangibly incorporate this without sacrificing profitability? The adrenaline turned to a wave of purpose. I can start drafting a detailed proposal outlining potential community partnerships and mentorship programs that utilize our existing resources without significant upfront costs, he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Mark rolled his eyes, but others nodded. Ethan sensed the shift, curiosity blossoming into intrigue. This was more than a personal transformation. It felt like a collective awakening. The conversation evolved, and instead of rejection, he received questions, challenges that sharpened his vision. Collaborating with his colleagues opened new paths he hadn't considered, igniting his excitement about the possibilities ahead. As the meeting drew to a close, the director turned to him, a slight nod of appreciation breaking through her professional facade. We expect you to take the lead on this initiative moving forward, Ethan. Gather support, and let's see what can be done. Walking out of the room, Ethan's heart raced, disbelief laced with exuberance. He was not just surviving this corporate culture, he was reshaping it. Thoughts raced through his mind, contemplating how to rally others around his mission. Who would be on board to elevate this vision from a fragile concept into a full-fledged strategy? Suddenly, one thought loomed larger than the rest. Would Mark, with all his doubt, become an ally or an antagonist? Ethan felt an internal tension rising, recognized the power and forthcoming confrontations that lay ahead. With the corners of his mouth turned up in a tentative smile, he stepped out into the corridor, thoughts racing onward. His conviction was stronger now, but the pivotal moment hadn't arrived yet. He needed allies, but there was also the gnawing realization that doubt could derail his momentum. The challenge was set. Could he truly win over potential opposers? As Ethan mulled over the possibilities, he felt something unexpected, a surge of hope. Yet, resolve warred with uncertainty. The office door closed quietly behind him, echoing the reality of the upcoming battles. The time had come to face Mark directly, and Ethan understood that this confrontation would tell him everything he needed to know. Would he rise to the challenge, or falter in the tides of corporate resistance? Ethan stood frozen in the corridor, the buzz of the meeting room fading into the background. The palpable uncertainty churned within him. He had just captivated an audience with an idea that had sprung from the depths of his ambition, yet the looming specter of doubt, embodied in Mark's cynical demeanor, threatened to unravel his momentum. He resolved to approach Mark first. It was time to dismantle the barriers that had formed between them. As he walked toward Mark's office, he envisioned a conversation steeped in reason, a chance to convert skepticism into support. But deep down, self-doubt whispered that such transformation might be naive. Mark's office door was closed, but it had a transparency that felt like a prelude to the impending confrontation. Ethan knocked lightly, taking a deep breath before hearing a gruff response to enter. The moment felt charged, his heart hammering in his chest. Mark was lounging behind his desk, fingers steepled beneath his chin, a mixture of bemusement and curiosity etched across his features. "I thought we just had a meeting about being realistic," he said, pushing back in his chair. "You really think your community strategy will fly?" Ethan squared his shoulders, drawing on the adrenaline that had surged through him in the meeting. "I believe it can," he replied, maintaining eye contact. "But it will take buy-in from our team. You know the market is changing. If we remain static, we'll lose ground." Mark leaned back, the faintest hint of respect flickering in his eyes. "And what makes you think the rest of the team will follow you?" "You tickled their fancy, Ethan, but this is business. It requires more than enthusiasm." This was where hesitation could slip through. "I'm drafting a proposal, detailing tangible connections to local organizations that could not only benefit our image, but drive sales." Mark raised an eyebrow. "And you think they'll trust you? You've only just begun climbing the ranks." The challenge resonated. "Trust is built on action, not just position," Ethan asserted, feeling the weight of each word. I'm ready to put in the effort to show them we can pivot. It means leaving behind the safety net of inaction. People will want to help. It's our role to make them see the potential. Mark watched him, an unreadable expression washing over his face. I'll give you this. You're a lot more compelling than before. But that doesn't change my skepticism. Prove to me you can engage the team, and I might back you. Ethan's resolve stiffened. I won't just prove it to you. I'll show everyone. But I need your support. Help me rally them behind this concept. We need leaders like you to stand with us. There was a pause, tension flickering as incomparable motivations clashed. Their mutual ambition teetered on the brink of collaboration. Mark nodded slowly, a flicker of curiosity igniting the air between them. Fine. But do not expect immediate buy-in. People will be resistant. Hearing that neutral agreement ignited a motley of emotions within Ethan: hope, trepidation, and the fear of potential failure. Mark's skepticism would be manageable, but Ethan recognized that the greater challenge lay ahead, solidifying his position as a transformative leader amid a sea of doubt. As he exited the office with an air of cautious optimism, Ethan felt the burden of his initiative swell around him, fortified by a new alliance that felt tentative, yet promising. Now, he had to act. The proposal needed to be structured, and the team approached in a manner that spurred collaboration rather than opposition. But as he settled at his desk, adrenaline waning to a quiet murmur, a new anxiety took root. Was he truly equipped to guide this initiative, or would he falter under the pressure of expectation? As days stretched ahead filled with meetings, and the need to inspire, uncertainty lingered. He could sense that the transformation required not just organizational buy-in, but a deeper shift within himself. Doubt was a monster crouching in the shadows, waiting for moments of weakness to seize control. His path was fraught with complexity. Ethan not only had to develop a strategy, but learn how to gauge the motives and tensions of those around him. Could he harness his vision to inspire change and silence the skepticism not just from Mark, but the entire team? As he prepared for the next steps, one thought consumed him. Success meant embracing every challenge head-on, or risking becoming a forgotten voice in the corporate machine. The moment of truth loomed ahead. Would he embrace the uncertainty and emerge stronger, or would the tides of resistance hold him down? He resolved that it was time to discover his true capacity amidst the corporate storm, and yet there was a lingering question at the back of his mind. What would the team think when the proposal was laid bare before them? Ethan leaned over his desk, papers strewn haphazardly, each one filled with notes and ideas that screamed for order. The daunting task of crafting a comprehensive proposal weighed heavily on his mind. He had to refine his vision into something both concrete and persuasive, an endeavor that would not only capture the team's attention, but also quell the lingering skepticism within him. He started to draft the proposal, focusing on the specifics, the local organizations, their missions, and how they aligned with his company's goals. Each connection he wrote about seemed to pull him deeper into his vision, offering a glimpse of what could be. A united front that not only engaged the community, but also raised their brand above the noise of competitors. But hesitation gnawed at him. He replayed the conversation with Mark, the way his skepticism had rippled through the air like a chill. Mark's reluctance was not unwarranted. Ethan was aware of the jagged edges surrounding his inexperience. What if Mark's warning came to pass? What if he failed to inspire the team? Determined to push through, Ethan scheduled a series of mini-meetings with key team members, those whose opinions carried weight, and those whose support would be essential. He had to tap into their strengths, share his vision, and convert their doubts into allies. Each invitation felt like a tightrope walk. One misstep could lead to further skepticism. That first meeting was with Maya, a veteran project manager known for her analytical prowess, but also for her resistance to change. As he settled into her office, Ethan took a moment to observe her. The cluttered desk, filled with color-coded files and meticulously organized sticky notes, spoke to her structured mind. "Maya," he started, forcing himself to maintain an open demeanor despite the flutter of nerves in his stomach. "I want to talk to you about an idea I had, one that could reshape our approach as a company." Her gaze lifted from the document she had been reviewing, and he could sense her cautious curiosity. "You know change isn't easy for anyone. What makes your idea different?" Ethan inhaled deeply, tapping into the commitment he felt. "I believe that engaging with our community can build trust and brand loyalty, but it requires all of us. I'm not asking you to follow blindly. I want your input, your expertise." Maya crossed her arms, leaning back. "It sounds promising if executed correctly, but can you guarantee the return on investment?" "Not in numbers," he admitted, feeling that familiar pang of vulnerability. "But what I can offer is a chance to redefine how our brand is perceived. That could translate to loyalty, which is hard to quantify, but so important. I want us to lead through authenticity, and to do that, I need your insights." A silence enveloped them, and Ethan could nearly hear the gears turning in her mind. He had been straightforward, laying his hand on the table without embellishments. Was it enough? After a tense pause, Maya nodded slowly. "I'll consider it. But you'll need a solid plan, one that demonstrates clear benefits, not just ideals. I won't back a fluffy concept." With that response, Ethan felt an unexpected flicker of optimism. It was small, but it was a shift, a tiny crack allowing light to seep in. They had begun to engage in a dialogue, one rooted in mutual respect. He had opened a door, and the prospect of collaboration felt more tangible. As he moved through subsequent meetings with his other colleagues, the same pattern emerged. There were moments of confrontation and strong skepticism, followed by glimmers of support as he laid bare his vision and the details behind it. Each meeting was a lesson, forcing him to adapt and refine his messages, to think critically about both the proposal and the resistance he faced. Despite the growing rhythm of collaboration, doubt remained woven into the fabric of his process. Progress was being made, yet Ethan sensed a looming storm. He would soon face the entire team, the moment where eyes would scrutinize his every point, glances echoing doubts he had yet to silence. With every interaction calculated in pursuit of support, Ethan understood he was not just building a proposal but also reshaping himself. Each challenge had pushed him to confront his fears, refine his approach, and engage in meaningful dialogue. But as he stared at the proposal now well into its final draft, he felt that familiar weight return, a twisting anxiety about the upcoming presentation where his once naive ideas would stand alone against scrutiny. How could he prepare his heart for what lay ahead? The enormity of the impending meeting froze his resolve. With lingering apprehension, one thought burned brighter than the others. Would he muster the courage to face the team's collective scrutiny, or would he retreat back into the shadows of self-doubt? Ethan could barely concentrate on the final touches of his proposal. Each time he attempted to review his points, the nagging sense of inadequacy clawed at him. His mind drifted to the countless expectations piled upon his shoulders, the eyes of his colleagues, and the expectation that he would bring concrete results. Yet, in every opportunity to showcase his vision, he felt more like an imposter, grappling with the thought that perhaps he wasn't the right person for this task. He gathered the materials he needed, his rough draft marked with scribbled notes and red flags, and made his way to the conference room. The familiar wood paneling and sterile whiteboard felt oppressive, as if the very walls conspired to amplify his fears. He placed his notes before him and took a moment to breathe deeply. The air was thick with tension and expectations. Suddenly, a plan formed in him. An idea that wasn't merely about the proposal, but about the essence of leadership. He could present not just an idea, but a story. A narrative that connected emotionally with the team. The journey he had embarked on was fraught with uncertainty, but it was also rich with discovery. How he chose to convey this would determine the reception of his vision. As people began to filter into the room, Ethan felt a familiar flutter of apprehension in his gut. The first few colleagues settled in, offering hurried smiles. As the wave of familiar faces filled the conference table, he noted the varying expressions of curiosity and skepticism. Would they be receptive to his passion, or would they simply see a novice fumbling his way through rhetoric? "Thanks for gathering, everyone. I deeply appreciate your time," Ethan began, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of uncertainty. "Today, I want to share something that goes beyond numbers or graphs. I want to share a vision, one that reflects not just our goals but our values as a company." He paused, gauging their reactions. Eyes narrowed, some leaned in as others exchanged glances, unsure of what to expect. The weight of their scrutiny pressed down, yet his adrenaline surged with purpose. "The crux of my proposal is simple," he continued, intense determination igniting his words. "It revolves around leveraging our position in the marketplace to foster a sense of connection and responsibility to those around us. This isn't just about goodwill. It's about creating a brand that reflects commitment to integrity. Loyalty, after all, is built on trust, and we must show that we are willing to invest in what matters." As he spoke about engaging the local community, details about possible collaborations surfaced, tangible actions backed by genuine intentions. Ethan could feel the walls of doubt begin to waver, softening in response to his authenticity. "I have learned from each one of you in our discussions. Your expertise is invaluable, and I truly want us to craft this vision together," he added. In acknowledging their expertise, he turned the focus away from his self-doubt and towards their collective potential. Yet, as he concluded, a familiar face caught his eye. Mark, arms crossed, brow furrowed. Ethan's heart sank. Mark had always been the harshest critic, harboring a reputation for entrapping ideas before they could breathe. The dread of Mark's impending critique ignited a nervous energy within him. "Interesting sentiments, Ethan, but isn't chasing an ideal just a distraction from what we really need to deliver? Stakeholders want results, not shared feelings." Mark's voice sliced through the room, sharper than Ethan anticipated. Ethan struggled to regain his footing, wrestling with the instinct to retreat into silence. This moment was a crossroads, a test of everything he had poured into not only the proposal, but into himself. "Perhaps what we need isn't just results," Ethan countered, conviction replacing his earlier hesitance. "Perhaps we need a paradigm shift that merges profit with purpose. If we don't expand our vision, are we merely perpetuating the status quo?" The tension thickened, but something within him surged with resolve. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated, and the weight of the responsibility began to forge an ember of bravery. The fear driving his self-doubt began to burn away, catalyzing a newfound clarity. This was the moment to pivot from fear of judgment to a mindset of possibility. Before he could second-guess himself, Ethan delivered one last, passionate plea for collaboration, emphasizing collective value over individual achievement. As he stepped back after the presentation, he sensed the shift in the room, a mix of contemplation, surprise, and the beginnings of uncertainty regarding their initial doubts. But as he caught Mark's gaze, the tension remained palpable, leaving an unspoken battle lingering in the air. Ethan's heart raced. Had he made a breakthrough, or merely planted seeds of division? The fog of uncertainty settled around him. It was time to prepare for the repercussions of his boldness. Would the seeds he had sown take root, or would they wither under scrutiny? The moment of truth loomed closer, and he knew the real challenge was just beginning. Could he navigate the aftermath of questioning not only from Mark, but from the entire team? Ethan emerged from the conference room, adrenaline coursing through his veins, the echoes of his own impassioned defense still reverberating in his ears. He had leaned into vulnerability, but as he stepped into the bustling office space, a persistent knot of anxiety remained. The support he craved from his colleagues had been tentative, and the weight of Mark's skepticism hung heavily over him. His initial rush fizzled into uncertainty. Had he truly reached his colleagues? Each whispered conversation, Each furtive glance seemed to amplify his self-doubt. What if they reverted to their comfort zones, abandoning the vision he had fought for? Determined to solidify his initiative, Ethan scheduled a follow-up meeting with the key team members who had shown interest. He needed to transform their curiosity into commitment, to galvanize them into action. The next few days consisted of drafting a detailed plan, stitching together ideas shared in previous conversations. As he gathered feedback from attendees after the initial presentation, he navigated a range of responses. Some were enthusiastic, others still skeptical. Maya, with her analytical precision, provided constructive critiques, guiding him in quantifying projected outcomes. Ethan wove her insights into his proposal, transforming ideas into a roadmap. Step by step, he constructed a foundation for his vision, peppered with specific data points demonstrating positive returns on investment paired with social responsibility. The proposal began to evolve, transforming from a mere idea into a tangible plan that was increasingly hard to dismiss. In this process, Ethan underwent a profound transformation. He was no longer just a man grasping at the edges of ambition. He had become a catalyst for change, melding his corporate acumen with his newfound aspiration to uplift those around him. Every conversation, every critique offered an opportunity not just to clarify his vision, but to deepen his understanding of collaboration. Finally, the day arrived for the broader team presentation. As he faced the group, a sense of clarity washed over him. This wasn't merely about him. It was a movement for collective growth. He had co-created a framework that recognized everyone's strengths, ensuring they each had a stake in the outcome. With each slide, he illustrated how mutual investment could yield shared rewards, demonstrating the synergy between profit and community impact. As he passionately articulated his vision, the room transformed. He saw skeptics begin to nod, eyebrows lifting in curiosity rather than dismissal. Mark, seated in the front row, leaned forward instead of lounging back. Ethan recognized the tide of opinion shifting. The notion of community engagement was starting to resonate as a pragmatic approach, not just an aspirational dream. After the presentation, a buzz of conversations sprang up around him. Colleagues began asking questions, offering suggestions, and actively brainstorming ways to refine their collaborative efforts. What had felt overwhelming just days before now glimmered with promise. Mark approached him, the usual arrogance stripped away, replaced with something resembling respect. "I'll admit, Ethan, you've managed to engage the team in a way I didn't expect. I can get behind this, with your plan's inclusivity. It's compelling." Ethan felt a rush of relief and pride. It was proof his transformation resonated not just within him, but with others. He stepped into the role of leader not through title, but through action and commitment. His vision was not merely accepted, it was becoming a shared mission. In the following weeks, Ethan spearheaded workshops and meetings, rallying his colleagues together. The initiative took on a life of its own, buttressed by the collective momentum they had built. Each step further solidified his confidence as he witnessed the tangible impact on the community forms evolving around him and the connections being forged within his company. Looking back, Ethan could scarcely recognize the man who had sped down the slick road, anxious and unsure of his purpose. Now he stood firm in a new identity, a leader reshaping not just his career, but the lives of those around him. Through the lens of transformation, Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had embraced authenticity over ambition, weaving life's purpose into his corporate identity. As he prepared for the official launch of their community engagement initiative, a profound realization settled within him. Success was not merely about numbers or power, but about the impact forged through collective empowerment and shared humanity. Standing before a boardroom filled with supporters instead of skeptics, Ethan was ready. He had not only achieved professional recognition, he had proven to himself that his path would be etched with purpose, authenticity, and a commitment to reflect the ideals he now embodied. It was time to encourage everyone to embark on this journey together, and as the meeting commenced, Ethan felt an exhilarating surge of confidence. He was not just leading a corporate initiative, He was championing a revolution of compassion within the business world. The moment showcased a culmination of his inner journey, a solid confidence born from the connections forged, the courage nurtured, and the impact realized as an outcome of his transformation. He had conquered doubt, demonstrated resilience, and finally, he had found his place, not just as a businessman, but as a harbinger of change. Now it was time to extend the invitation. Let them stride forth together, to blend ambition with compassion, and redefine success on their own terms. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories from the journey of transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the storytelling that inspires perseverance and courage. Comment your reactions and theories about the conclusion we've reached and how it will continue to unfold. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this journey of overcoming the toughest challenges. Don't wait even one more second to help amplify these stories that demonstrate resilience and purpose for everyone striving towards greatness.